Hey folks, how's it going? Today we're going to talk about the midpoint formula. And what you're going to have to be able to do is you're going to have to be able to find the midpoint if I give you two endpoints. And then you're also going to have to be able to find the endpoint if I give you a midpoint and then the other endpoint. So let's take a look. So here we've got a line segment, and you can tell that it's been divided, that point M is the midpoint, and they've created two right triangles here, and they're obviously going to be the same size. And so you'll notice that x minus x1 is going to be equal to x2 minus x. And so that's the two bases of those two triangles. And so if we take a look at that and go ahead and get the x's on one side, well, if I add x to both sides, that's going to give me 2x. And then I add the x1, so then it's going to say 2x is equal to x1 plus x2. Well, now all I got to do to get x by itself is divide everything by 2. And you can see where we get x is equal to x1 plus x2 over 2. If I do the same thing for the y's, y minus y1 and y2 minus y1, I'm going to get y is equal to y plus y1 plus y2 over 2. And I'm sure you recognize this. That's the midpoint formula. And that just basically is explaining where it kind of comes from. It proves it, I guess. And so in order to find the midpoint of a line segment, we can't find the midpoint of a line. A line goes on forever in each direction, so it's got to be a line segment. All we've got to do is take the x's and add them together and divide by 2, and the y's and add them together and divide by 2. And again, another way to take a look at it is we're just finding the average. What's the average between 8 and 10? Well, it's 9. 8 plus 10 is 18. 18 divided by 2 is 9. If I do the same thing with 7 and 11, it's going to be 8. It's going to be 9 also. So all we're doing is finding the average of the x's and the average of the y's, and that's going to give us the midpoint. So that's an easy way to remember this formula. So if I'm given these 2 points, we're going to find the midpoint. So what I want you to do is go ahead and pause this and then see if you can't find it using the formula that we just talked about. Remember, all you're doing is finding the average of the x's and the average of the y's. Start back up again when you're ready. All right, hopefully you did that. So if we take a look here and I take the x's and add them up and divide by 2, I get 2.5. And if I take the y's and add them up and divide by 2, I get 3. And we've drawn a little right triangle here. You can tell clearly that that is the midpoint because the one side is only 3 units long and the other one is 4 units long. It definitely cuts it in half. All right, so the answer would be 2.5 comma 3. That's the midpoint. Now let's take a look here. I've got 2 endpoints and I want you to find the midpoint again. Go ahead and pause it and start back up again when you're ready. Okay, hopefully you did that, and if you sketch it, sometimes that's helpful, sometimes it's not possible because the points are too far apart. It's not necessary, but sometimes if you get stuck, it's helpful. Anyway, when we take this and use the midpoint formula, we add the x's together and divide by 2. We're going to get it 2.5 comma 1 negative 1.5 or negative 0.5. So here we're going to find the endpoint. If we're going to find the endpoint where they gave us the midpoint, that's going to be 2, 1, and they gave us the other endpoint, that's 1, 4. And they want us to find this endpoint k, because you can see the line segments jk. All right, so here's a little sketch of that. You can see we have the end and we have the mid, and we need to find the other end. Now, using the formula, all we've got to do is break it apart into x's and y's and then plug in what we know. In this case, we know what the x value of the midpoint is. So if I go ahead and set that up, the x value of the midpoint is 2. And then if I fill in the other endpoint, and then I don't know the one endpoint, so I'm going to put an x for that. And now all I got to do is solve for x by multiplying both sides by 2. And I'm going to find out that x is going to equal 3. And then I do the same thing for the y's. Again, setting it up, I know the y part of the midpoint is 1, And so then if I put in the one end that I know, y, and then it's going to be 4 plus y divided by 2. And when I multiply both sides by 2, it's going to end up saying 4 plus y is equal to 2, and then I subtract 4 on both sides, and then y is going to equal negative 2. Now another way to look at this is if I went from here to here, it's got to be the same as going from the mid to the other end. So if you can sketch it, what you can also do is think of it like this. Look at the x. If I went from the end to the mid, I went 1 to 2. Well, that means from the mid to the other end, I also have to go 1. So that should be a 3, which you see it is. And if you take a look here, from the end to the mid, I went from 4 to 1. So that means I subtracted 3. So if I take 1 and subtract 3, that gets me negative 2. And that's what I've got here. So you can use either method, either graphing it or using the formula. Anyway, the answer would be 3, negative 2. That's the other end. So in this one, let's try to find the midpoint. They're giving us the two endpoints. They are A is 1, 2, and B is 7, 8. So go ahead and pause this and find the midpoint using the formula that we talked about. And then start back up again when you're ready. Okay, hopefully you did that. And hopefully what you found was that the answer is the midpoint is 4, 5. In this problem, I'm giving you the midpoint of VW. M is negative 1, negative 2. And then I'm giving you one endpoint, W in this case, and that's going to be 4, 4. And then I want you to find the endpoint V. So you can use either method that we talked about. You can graph it or you can use the formula. But pause it and then start back up again when you're ready, and we'll compare. Okay, hopefully you did that. If we take a look here, we're going to, if I use the formula, it's going to be 4 plus x over 2 is equal to negative 1, because negative 1 is the x part of the midpoint. And then if I multiply both sides by 2, it's going to say 4 plus x is equal to negative 2. And then if I subtract 4, it's going to be negative 2 minus 4, and x is going to be negative 6. And if I do the same thing for the y's, that's going to be 4 plus y over 2 is equal to negative 2. If I multiply both sides by 2, it's going to be 4 plus y is equal to negative 4. And then if I subtract 4 on both sides, y is going to equal negative 8, giving me an answer of negative 6, negative 8. That's all I got for now. I hope that helped, and thanks for watching.